now?
Well, good afternoon-ish. I guess more evening for you.
Yes, it's almost winter.
Winter.
Yes. The time
Well, in order to fix that, I went out the other day and I bought one of those programmable outdoor light switches. So tonight is the big test to see if it's really, really magic. You set it for your area, and it knows, based on the date and the year, where the sunrise and sunset is. And if it's programmed the way I think it's supposed to, the light should go on and off automatically between dawn and dusk, or dusk and dawn.
Well, wouldn't a little sensor know that? If it gets dark, it means it's getting night?
I know, but this is for the porch light.
Oh.
So I can't put a sensor on the porch light. I don't think. Anyway, it was cheap enough kind of fix. And I only electrocuted myself 4 times.
Well, you better be careful, because that could be a new way of dealing with maid.
Could be. I wonder if the Carnage government is listening in.
Well, I have no doubt they are, because we are probably not on their Christmas list.
You know, I can't tell you how much that disappoints me.
Yeah, me too. But I don't think you're probably on Mr. Eby's Christmas list either.
Well, probably not, but then he's not on mine, so that's okay.
Yeah, it's this very difficult podcast today. To keep a straight face and a smile and a positive approach to things today is not easy for us, I think.
For us two in particular, yeah. I don't know how many others fall into that category. I don't think we'll ever find out. Because, much like in the United States, the polls that you see are usually the polls that you always see, because that's how your social media accounts point them. And if it happens to be, in our case, a liberal-run organization, you're going to get a liberal slant on things. If you're a conservative, you're going to get a conservative slant on things. And if you're somewhere down the middle, you probably just don't get any at all.
Well,
So I'm actually thinking about moving to the center of the political spectrum, because I'm tired of the left stuff and the right stuff and the...
Well, you're going to be pretty lonely there.
I know, but...
Or will be lonely there.
I don't think, I suffered from that several times during my illustrious career, and it didn't seem to bother me too much, so...
Well, I don't know how we start this off, because it's a lamentable situation, I think, that we find ourselves in the broader historical context, I think.
Well, that's true. It's things that we've talked about over the last 4 years. Kind of reminds me in many cases of banging your head against the wall. We just haven't realized, or I guess maybe perhaps we're starting to realize that when we stop banging our head, we don't get the headaches, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about where we are right now with the Canadian future in terms of the economy.
Oh, economy? Okay. Maybe. As a country, I think that the passage of Bill C-3, where if you happen to... Well, let's make this...
Well, you have to explain C-3, because not everyone knows what the hell you're talking about.
Well, C-3 is the, I guess for lack of a better word, the lost Canadians that actually had their parents had the audacity to move away from Canada and have them when they in fact were perhaps landed immigrants themselves before. And if you can prove that your great-great-great-great-great-grandfather once spent 1,000 days in Canada, which is basically 3 years, you are eligible to make a claim for Canadian citizenship. And I don't know what has to be proven or what doesn't have to be proven, but all it has done now is opened up the and how do we prove it? I feel so sorry for the people on the front lines at CBSA to be able to prove or refute somebody's claim that they have a claim to Canadian citizenship now. There's nothing that stops anybody from doing it. And that has been the decline of our country in many respects, because not only do we not respect our country, we don't respect our citizenship, we don't respect the history that's behind it. We are not learning from all the countries around the world where they're actually toughening up their citizenship laws. So I guess that's kind of where we are on that aspect. The economy, well, all these people coming in, maybe they'll pay more taxes, but as soon as they find out that 70% of what they make is going to be given to the government to support the bunch of other people that don't work, they're probably going to be voting with their feet and leaving too.
Well, I'll have to disagree with you. And the reason I have to disagree with you is because I don't see them, stampeding out of the country. Because there are too many incentives to keep them here.
Well, that's only going to go so far. The money's going to run out.
No, you can just print more. Listen, again, I respectfully disagree with you. This bunch, I know it. I know you're not going to respect me for this. But this bunch is just printing money and borrowing more money to buy these people off. I mean, come on.
You can print and you can print and you can print, but at what point does it end up that none of the world monetary sources or countries are going to come to help you out? Eventually, it's going to be like at the end of the Second World War, where you needed a wheelbarrow full of $1 million Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread.
First World War. Depression. Yeah, I know. But this fairy tale that you can spend yourself to prosperity is a fairy tale. The suggestion that look, this bunch that has contrived this new Canada, the new government of Canada, and the new Canada that they're promoting, coast to coast to coast, okay, is based on the premise that if you go deep enough into debt and spend as much money as possible that you never earned, that somehow you will create an economy that's self-sustaining. Moreover, if you combine that fairy tale with the historical context of socialism / communist central planning, that it is absolutely a winner. And everybody is going to be in the money. What they don't tell you, of course, is they'll be in a third world kind of money, where it'll be pretty hard scrabble living, because this morning, after these eggheads came up with this brilliant budget that basically feathers the nests of corporations, equity funds, American stocks, and so forth, Canadian dollar slipped. Oh my God, it's dropping on the foreign exchange markets. Why is that? Because you cannot print all that money and borrow all that money without having an effect on the money markets, because people who know what it is to earn money, not print it, not borrow it, are pulling the strings here. So it's simply not a good omen right off the hop here. 24 hours after this budget was brought down, you and I are talking about it, And we're not economists. We're just ordinary folks looking at this and reading the tea leaves that are presented by people outside of Canada, not inside Canada. Not the traders who are selling the country off bit by bit. But the people who... sorry.
I think it kind of makes me wonder how we got hoodwinked with this guy who's supposed to be a wonderful economist that was a governor of 2 major banks. Doesn't appear to know that you can't spend your way forward.
Spending your way to prosperity.
Where did he get his economics degree from? I've got a PhD, a piled higher and deeper from a matchbook company university, and I'm sure that is probably is equally as good as what his is.
Well, he did go to, I believe, Harvard or wherever. I don't know where he went. Look, the guy is not. He's not stupid, because you wouldn't be able to hoodwink your way to the top of a used to be middle power country if you were stupid. What you're banking on is a great deal of stupid people who buy into the story.
Who's pulling the strings to get you there? We have lived through a decade here of DEI, and not always the best person gets the job. Is this a case of a DEI appointment in 2 countries?
No.
Is it a fake resume? Is it?
No.
I put nothing beyond anything anymore.
Bob, cast your mind back 10 years. The morons in this country put a guy in charge who was a failed school teacher and a snowboard instructor who had
that likes to serve. Oh yeah,
and likes. Okay, they made this guy the prime minister. Okay, because his name was, I won't even say his name because it makes me nauseous. Okay, because his old man was the first guy to start putting nails into the coffin of Confederation. He just didn't finish the job. There was a hiatus between him and his son. But his son decided to finish the job. That's what we're talking about. And after 10 years, even the most ardent numbskulls, you got to be careful because, these videos stay on the internet forever. So you have to be cognizant of what you say. Call them numbskulls. Decided they had enough of the idiot king. So they go out, and the carpetbaggers in the Numbskull Association finds this banker. Grifter. Who is successful in his own way, but not in a way that a leader of a country can be seen as a success. This guy is as much of a leader of people as I can't even think of him. He's just not. Just not. Okay. So the carpetbaggers in the Laurentian elites within the Liberal Party of Canada clearly were no friends of that outfit, and their little core of crackpots and assorted corporatists in Quebec and Ontario pulled this guy out of a hat. Literally, because if you asked anybody a year ago who's Mark Carney, they would have looked at you like you're the man from the moon. What are you talking about? Okay, unless you had an old $20 bill with his signature on it, nobody knew who this guy was, and nobody bothered to question his great talents as the Bank of Canada. For the time, he was a paid bureaucrat, technocrat. Then he gets the same job in the UK, and if anybody bothered to ask the folks in the UK what a great job he did, we would have learned that he screwed that up royally. So, this guy who's yanked into the job, who can't make up his mind whether he's a Canadian, an Irishman, or a Brit, shows up here, right? And now does the same thing all over again that he did while he was with the Bank of England. Okay, the net zero nonsense, the climate change nonsense, the woke nonsense, the DI nonsense, everything that drove the UK into the mess, or started the UK into the mess that it's in today. And his pal is none other than Keir Starmer, who was cut from exactly the same cloth as this fellow, okay, who's driving the UK into absolute misery. Okay, and the UK's destiny as a country whether you like it or not, is a train wreck from the monarchy on down. Everything is a mess over there. Okay, and the people have gotten totally complacent over almost the same number of years over what was once the colonial leader of the entire globe, and it's a nothing today by comparison, and it's going down the drain on so many levels. You just watch this thing, and this kind of self-loathing, narcissistic, incompetent, woke DEI, we already ran through that list, is now here, and he's got a captive audience. I'm sure there are a few million of us in the country who don't buy into this, but there are more who are buying into it. Certainly the media is buying into it because they're bought off. The Globe and Mail, the Toronto Star, two major newspapers, even the National Post is going on about, well, we should give this a chance. Let's see how deep we go into debt, because maybe it'll come out okay at the other end. Yes, it's central planning has always been a success wherever it's been tried, but they just don't want to talk about it. They're bought off. Then you buy off the opposition members but you pick them off one by one. This guy from Nova Scotia, God knows what he was promised to cross the floor, and then pronounce that he's a red Tory, even though he's now a Liberal. There's another one in Alberta. We spoke about
it. A blue Liberal? A red Tory, a blue Liberal?
Yeah, well, whatever the hell he is, he's a scumbag as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. But you think that the caucus and the Liberal Party is going to actually embrace at least one his damn vote? They're not going to tell him anything. If anything, they're going to take him into a room with a bright light and ask him everything he knows about Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, and what were the plans, and what possibly does the Conservative Party have on the 11 MPs that they don't want to ever talk about. Let's not forget that. So, and then out will come the fact that Poilievre doesn't have his security clearance. Well, give me a break. Of course he has a security clearance. He was a Minister of Housing in the previous government 10 years ago. So all that is nonsense. But you're going to see.
It's a good thing to run up the flagpole.
Of course.
Obfuscate.
So what happens when a corrupt guy runs up against the head of the mafia? Well, he's told what to do. He's either there because he got bought off, or they have something on him. That's how this works. And he's going to keep his mouth shut, and he'll be in the back of the line in the government backbenches. That's where he's going to be. His usefulness is one vote.
Well, and that, I guess, is, to me, the classic sign of a swine ball. If he didn't like Mr. Poilievre, he had the option of resigning his seat and sitting as an independent, much like Ms. Raybould Wilson did, much like
Philpott.
Ms. Philpott did.
Yep.
That, I think, to me, was a lot more honorable than picking up your ball and running across the playground with it. You know what I mean? It's
Bob, it would have been honorable if he really had this problem with Poilievre publicly, go up there and say, listen, I don't agree with what you're doing. We heard nothing about him being taken to task, or taking Poilievre to task on none of this stuff. This is all backroom garbage. It's in the same slimy sewer that Ford and Carney were wading into over this ad that they put on in the States. And then when it all went sideways, okay, then one of them is lying, or both of them are lying, because he said, "Oh, I said it was okay." No, he said it was okay. No, I didn't say it was okay. He did. Everybody's all over the map on this one. Okay.
Being parents, you and I both know, having raised children, that is exactly how things go. Well, I didn't throw the ball that knocked that Ming vase off the counter. It was her. No, I didn't do it. You threw it to me, and I threw it back to you, and that's all it is. It's just it showed, as you've mentioned many times before, the junior varsity level of politics that we have, I won't say all of us, but a great many people have embraced in Canada. You mentioned before, there's a couple million people who agree with this and a couple million people who disagree with that. And I think, as you said in pre-production, the vast majority of Canada and Canadians don't care.
No.
As long as the paycheck comes in, as long as this comes in, as long as that comes in, I'm not going to upset the apple cart. You and I both worked with that same concept when we worked in overseas missions. Why are you stopping my daughter's son-in-law from coming to Canada? He's a nice guy, and it goes on and on and on, and he gets his visa issued, he comes to Canada, and then within 6 months, these same people are coming back saying, why can't you get rid of this guy? He's a complete jerk. Until it starts to affect individuals, nothing is going to change. Your favorite person the other night on TV after the budget, Elizabeth May, said, I don't know when Mr. Carney is going to stop speaking like a corporate banker and running Canada like a company. He doesn't seem to know how to get it running as a country, which we've talked about before. They both start with C, they both end... it's despondent.
Well, the trouble is that we have a large population that's been watered down by people who have no business being here and have no skin in the game. So you've watered. So the country's been watered down, and this has been done on purpose. You flood the country with about 5 million people who have no, as I say, skin in the game here. They don't care. So that leaves you with a whole bunch of other people who might have a reason to care, but are cognitively retarded and don't care. Okay, and then you've got about 30% that buys into this nonsense and are living off the fat of the land, frankly, because they are of that ilk. And they listen to people like the finance minister, Champagne, who says you can't blame the Liberals for the last decade of failures because the world has changed in the last 10 months when this clown came over from England to run the place. So, what you can see is that the only thing that this government has is always blaming someone else for the problem, that they've created, whether the problem is created by Trump, which is the favorite boogeyman. Everything is Trump's fault. I mean, these people have been in power 10 years. Trump has not been in power 10 years, but, they seem to have forgotten the 4 years of the Biden administration. They didn't give a rat's behind about Canada, but it's always about Trump. And that's becoming tiresome as an excuse. And
that and our supposed leader who was out without the input of any committee or any parliamentary vote, and decides that we're going to give $20 billion to the Ukraine. At the same time, we're probably going to put boots down in the Ukraine. Then we go off to the ASEAN meetings where he signs the defense pact with the Philippines, who probably has a bigger army than we do.
Philippines.
And then he flies and jets off to Beijing, where he's glad handling and sucking up to the Chinese leadership and gets a big photo op and a handshake. And then they turn around and say, Mark, if you really want us to be on your side, you better rip up that agreement with the Philippines because you're meddling in our affairs.
That's right. You're in our backyard. Stay the hell out of here.
Yeah.
No, there's no question. And this is the same bunch that he said when he showed up after the carpetbaggers brought him over here that, China is an existential threat to Canada. And he listed all the things we all know: meddling in the election, getting involved in shady deals, shooting apparently Canadian is a Canadian is a Canadian, according to the Idiot King before, but they didn't care. They put a bolt in the head of a bunch of them. Okay. And then they had those two Michaels locked up for the longest time. Now all of a sudden everything's hunky-dory. Because, well, what? In fact, it's so hunky-dory, we're going to give them group visas now to come to Canada because we need those tourist bucks from Chinese.
And we're going to give them $1 billion to build 4 ferries for my province.
Yeah, well, don't talk to me about your province because you're not part of Canada anymore anyway.
Oh, that's true too, yeah.
According to your
We've
premier.
elected a guy who's perhaps a bigger idiot king than the idiot king we had.
Well, he's the idiot prince, I guess. I mean, this Eby guy is really... Eby reminds me of that fool to the south of you, Gavin Newsom. He's just... They're crazy lunatics, you know? But this guy is completely nuts when he says things like, our economy, our coast. What do you mean, our economy, our coast? What are you, running a little fiefdom out there?
Well, I think he is, primarily because we've got such a separated right vote that they're pretty well guaranteed to be in power for the next couple of elections.
Well, great.
But you have to also remember, this is the guy that 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, wouldn't, even though we had the legislation in place, would not drop daylight savings time because we had to wait for our American friends to get it passed through the Senate and the House in Washington, D.C., because we couldn't operate on 2 different time clocks. Although we can handle it with Alberta, we couldn't handle it with the west coast of the United States, who then took, I don't know, some kind of a dope-me-up pill, where now those same West Coast people are our biggest enemies. And, you know, this goes back to that wonderful person, Rex Murphy. I don't know why he put that challenge out that you can't suck and blow at the same time, because there are so many people that are trying to prove him wrong. It boggles my mind.
Well,
I'm glad he's not. Well, I'm not. I'm sorry that he's not around, because I think he would be having just a field day with the fiasco that is going on in this landmass called Canada.
Well, it's just
the country.
No, it's just real estate. Real estate with 10 different realtors. I'll put it that way. You've got the realtor in BC, you got the realtor in Ontario, you got the realtor in Alberta, you got a realtor in Quebec. You know, these are all part of the so-called Team Canada Real Estate Company, which is operating 10 different real estate outfits.
Boards.
Yeah. Okay. The lie that we've been told since the Idiot King and Carnage showed up is that he's running Team Canada, and we had these meeting after meeting. Well, these guys all puffed up. We're going to show the American this, and we're going to tell Trump that, and then they go down. This guy goes down to Washington twice in the Oval Office, and in plain sight is ooling and drooling and just literally kissing the ring. I almost said something I shouldn't have. The ring of I stopped myself of Trump. But while he's in outside of the United States, is basically slagging the guy. And then about a month ago, he's suddenly saying, well, we got the best deal we ever could, and everything's just hunky-dory. But I'm just going to go out and do things like we're going to diversify. And apart from pissing away billions that he doesn't have, or we don't have, or that we will end up paying for in taxes because he's going to borrow the money or print the money, he's worrying about things like joining the European Union's Eurovision Song Contest. And I'm thinking, have we completely lost our senses at the top? And the answer to that is yes, completely
it's not
lost
just the Eurovision contest, Tom. It's the fact that we're now going to take Swedish Griffin jets and fly them all over the country. Because, Quebec will get a plant to fix them, and the Maritimes might get the command station to look after them, and Ontario will get maybe the parts manufacturing for that.
No.
But the reality is that it would be like it was with North America when it first joined NATO. Why do you think that particular organization standardized on a 9mm shell? Because that was 9mm all in Europe, and in the United States and in Canada, we had a different caliber. And if you got into a firefight and you ran out of ammunition,
within NATO,
wouldn't it just be nice to reach over to your buddy and get something else to continue?
Sure.
And we're going to throw this all out the window now by having a different jet that won't have NORAD capability scramblers on it. We're not going to have the submarine. Well, we've got 4 submarines, I think.
Two of them don't work.
Anyway, whatever
Doesn't
it
matter.
is. And now we're going to look to Korea to get submarines.
No. It's not going to happen. You can look all you like. You can listen. The deal with the Griffith, the Swedish jets, is apparently that is to build them and ship them to Ukraine. This is like a big.
Oh yeah, I forgot that.
I mean, come on. Look, you know full well that none of this stuff will be compatible within NORAD. The Americans will tell us to go pound salt on having any of this stuff installed in a Swedish fighter jet that's going to be somehow compatible with the F-35s and F-16s and the whole NORAD radar system. Same with the Navy. They're not going to let Canada get what the hell was it, German or South Korean submarines filled with American technology, because even the South Koreans, the deal that Trump signed, because there's morons in the Canadian media don't talk about things that happen. They just make up stories about Canada on the scene. The submarine deal with South Korea and the Americans is that they signed a deal that the Koreans could build nuclear submarines under license from the boat company in Connecticut. That's how this works, okay? Because the South Koreans will never be given that kind of technology by the number one superpower, okay? That's how this works. So if these numbskulls in Ottawa can sell to the brain-dead Canadians that we're going to have 12 submarines with all this equipment, which, by the way, has to come from our pals to the south, who we have no relationship with anymore.
Apparently it's done.
It's done. And we're going to build airplanes in Canada out of kits from Sweden and put in, all sorts of equipment that the Americans won't give to the Swedes, but we're going to take.
What happens, though? Is that one of those things when you go to IKEA, they give you that wrench? Is that the way it's going to be?
I think so. Right up there with the frigates that they're going to build that aren't going to have the Aegis system. We're going to have some European bullshit. Come on, this is all nonsense. Look, the fiefdoms will fall apart eventually. It's just if we keep doing this, and like you said, 2 years from now, people say, well, those two guys were right. Well, it doesn't matter, because 2 years from now, when it's all gone south in all sorts of ways. It won't be. So what? We can say we were right. That's not going to make me happy, because that's not what this is. This is not what we wanted as a country.
No, it's not. I'd like to go back about 10 years and bring some sprinkle dust. Remember that the movie, the Men in Black, where they had that?
Yes.
We need to do that. We need to go back and get that light and shine in a few people's faces.
All forgotten. I'm back.
Who are you?
What happened?
Who are you? What are we doing here? Look, it's 2015.
Exactly.
We can go out and vote next month.
Yeah, exactly. Well, if we had a time machine, I would have had Katy Perry boinking the Idiot King much sooner, and then perhaps he would have stayed in California.
And that's another. I don't care.
Oh, I don't know. I'm using the time machine as a tool to get rid of this 10 years of nightmares.
I don't know. We just can't seem to focus on what is important. We as a population are just enamored with the fact that the former PM now has an award given to him, which nobody's ever heard of before.
Chicago something or other. Yeah, I remember that.
and he's now dating a Hollywood superstar.
Like I care.
It's kind of like Prince Harry all over again, right? And that hasn't worked out well for Prince.
No, it hasn't worked out, but it's indicative of so many things that we spoke about earlier that's wrong in the UK, and some of that sort of thinking is very much, look, to me, it was something suspicious about when the Carnage was elected. The first trip was to go suck up to Starmer and the King, and then a few days later to bring the King over here. This skeleton of a man who's very ill, and basically it was elder abuse having him up there talking about how the new government of Canada is going to be doing stuff. It did nothing to impress anybody, even if you're a monarch. I said, what are you talking about? This is silly. So the threads that lead back to where he's from, and like I said, when he in the budget, they're talking about being in the. What serious country puts this in their budget that they're looking at ways to enter the Eurovision Song Contest? What the hell does that have to do with fixing a declining, deindustrialized country? A country that's falling apart socially, a country that doesn't know what the hell it is, where you have essentially the real estate fiefdoms running the show here. A country whose budget was published yesterday, and the number one industry in its major province of Ontario isn't even talked about. The auto industry, there's not a mention of the fact that it is completely falling apart. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
And they forget that not only is the American brand, Chrysler, or Stellantis, Ford, and GM going south, but so is Toyota, because the Japanese signed a deal with the Americans to set up Toyota manufacturing in the U.S. You think that they're going to be leaving the plant up in Ontario to continue making RAV4s? You must be dreaming. So, but this budget should not. So you can see the deindustrialization continues. The fiefdoms are starting now to clearly carve out their own niches. You got your idiot in BC talking about nothing can happen unless there's a deal with Indigenous Canadians. Okay, well, you can kiss that goodbye. Basically says that the British Columbia has nothing to do with Canada because your coast and it's your water and it's your mountains and it's yours. Fine, take it. Float off in the Atlantic. Or, sorry, the Pacific. Because the floating off in the Atlantic for those fools in eastern Canada, well, that they don't care anyway, because once the gravy train from Ottawa dries up, they'll be heading to Boston to make a deal faster than you can say Prince Harry.
Jiminy Cricket.
Yeah, so
well, and, that is the whole thing. The theme for this broadcast just might be: where are we? Where are we going? And how did we get here?
Well, and it's so Canadian that this budget is just a huge word salad on so many levels. And you listen to this guy who was the finance minister in tortured English going on for 3 hours about all the things that this bunch is going to fix after 10 years of wrecking it, and you go, this is just silly.
And I can't understand again the mentality of the Canadian voter that was so upset with the previous prime minister, who was going to have the audacity to double the debt to $80 billion, and they are now, what, 130 or more? Well, I'm sure it's probably Mr. Poilievre's fault, but somewhere along the line.
Look, there's various ways to make it simple for the people who might be watching us and not understanding, particularly if you're in the United States and you trip over this video and you go, what are these two guys talking about? what we have here in Canada is a hostage situation and the Stockholm Syndrome at the same time. You've got people like EB in British Columbia that basically has taken the province hostage and is now saying things like, well, we're not really part of Canada. It's our coast, it's our economy, it's our land, get lost. He was part of the team, but now he's taken hostages, essentially. And his allies, wittingly or otherwise, are the Indigenous in BC, who think they're going to make millions off of the people who have been taken hostage. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Right? Then you have another hostage situation, which is in Quebec. We've had that one going on, and in Quebec you even have the Stockholm Syndrome, where people are going, well, that's okay, I think we can be an independent nation, there's no problem. We are a nation. Hell, the Constitution says we are a nation. Okay? Then you have the bumpkins, as the Ottawa people would call out in Alberta and Saskatchewan, those country bumpkins, they just don't know what they're talking about, because we're smarter than they are, and they're trying to cozy up to those Americans, and we're going to teach them a lesson. And they're held hostage by various rules and regulations dreamt up by people who hate their guts, which is anybody in the Laurentian elite. Okay,
yeah.
So
I guess my whole thrust of this diatribe that we're talking about is to Alberta and Saskatchewan in particular. Don't be in a rush to become the 52nd state, or the 51st state with 2 counties, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Don't rush into that. You've got a lot of time. You can look at things. Look at Guam. Look at Puerto Rico. They're trust territories. Maybe not trust territories anymore, but they're territories. Places where they can actually have their own identity. They may not get a representation in Congress, but who cares? Is that a big thing? We've lived through decades now where it means absolutely nothing to have a government anyway.
Correct.
Or let's look at the different small states like Liechtenstein, whatever they happen to be. I'm sure if Alberta was an independent republic of Alsace or Saskal or whatever you want to call it,
yep,
then you could probably negotiate with our neighbors to the south to get your oil to the world on their pipelines.
Well, I think that Manifest Destiny / the Monroe Doctrine as well, and a lot, we've spoken about this before, and there's sweet F all we can do about that. They are a superpower. They're gonna do what is in the interest of the military-industrial complex in the U.S., whether we like it or not. They're going to probably kick the butts of the Venezuelans, because the number one oil-producing country in the world happens to be Venezuela. It's in the Western Hemisphere, in the northern part of the Western Hemisphere, and that's not going to be allowed to be run by cartels as far as the American military-industrial complex is concerned. So you got that. They're going to exploit the oil and gas reserves in Alaska, and they don't give a rat's behind. At British Columbia, the fiefdom says no tankers on the West Coast. Those tankers will go from Alaska to wherever the hell they want to. 20
tankers a day running up and down over the Prudhoe Field anyway.
Exactly. So this is all malarkey. The truth of the matter is, whatever cards that we played as a junior player in the casino of North America, which worked out fairly well until about 10 years ago, until somebody got uppity. The idiot king got uppity, and his pals thought, well, let's see how much we can go to the trough with. Okay, because that's all this is, feather bedding themselves. These people are corrupt as hell. Okay, and I suspect there's even a little bit of evil in them, because nobody destroys a place that was pretty well admired around the world and respected, and they took it and they destroyed it in 10 years, and now they're ready to put the finishing touch on it. And we're sitting here, 2 old guys, going, you gotta wake up, people. This is not how this is supposed to work. But we're pissing into the wind, because there's so many people who just don't care. And now I have to tell you, I'm getting to the point where, maybe we should not care either. Let's just reveal what we know,
that's true. Yeah.
and take it to the bank if you like. If you don't, you can always hit the stop button, and you don't have to watch this channel. But this is just two guys who've been around for a while, who've seen stuff and said, listen, this isn't normal, okay? And this is like a suicide mission or a kamikaze mission, call it what you like, because this is the destruction of a country for corporate reasons. And the globalist woke DEI run all those various letters and names all you like. At the end of the day, this is a place that had great promise for millions of people, even the indigenous people of this country, and they have wrecked it. And they've wrecked it to fill their boots.
Pockets.
So simple as that.
The other side of that coin, Tom, is that the way we're going, we are going to be walking right into the trap of a manifest destiny. We're just giving all kinds of ammunition to the United States to say, what are those guys doing? There's no way, if they don't like what's going on in Venezuela,
I know where you're going with this.
They're sure not going to like what's going on up here if we become a socialist / communist / whatever.
Well, let's be clear here. The Americans are up to their necks as well with crazy people who are from Zoran Mandami, who got elected yesterday on a socialist / communist agenda, and convincingly won in New York City. You've got EB's pal down there in California, who's merrily changing the various voting districts so that there'll only be 4 Republicans in the entire state that can get elected. So if that isn't central planning, I don't know what is. You got lunatics running Minneapolis, St. Paul with socialism, Portland and Seattle are you've got pockets of craziness, and we have the same thing, only it's in a different scale, because for us the pockets of craziness versus rural urban, we have 3 big cities that are big pockets of this liberal nonsense: Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto, and that's basically, if you've got that under control, the rest of the country can go whistle Dixie. Okay.
Well, as we all know, out west here, with our voting stops and the polls close in Ontario, the government's already decided it really doesn't matter what happened out west.
Well, that's right, and it's not how you build a country, but it's how you wreck a country. Okay, we should have done over a decade ago, and I put the blame on Harper and that gang. They had 10 years to do stuff, and they didn't, about how to fix things like the inequities in the voting system, the inequalities on the sharing system of the budget, on clearing up these interprovincial, not interprovincial, but federal provincial sharing disputes. That all these things should have been fixed. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, and so they share the blame there, but that's the old saying about what are you going to do about spilt milk. But what that gave the idiot king and the carnage crowd a chance is to finish the job for their globalist pals. And if it's all about, as you hinted at during pre-production, if the guy is a good banker, a good equity fund manager, he drives his place into the ground, essentially economically, makes it almost ungovernable, and then walks away and sells it to the highest bidder. Essentially, if things become so desperate in so many sectors of the economy and the social stability of the country writ large is questioned, it's going to be very easy for some messiah from the United States to show up and say, "Well, fix it for you. 10 cents on the dollar fixes it." It's not a surprise to me, for example, that last week or the week before, 2 major mining operations were bought by American interests directly by the government. 20% in the case of one mine is entirely owned by the United States government. When have you heard of a country that sells out its mining interests to another sovereign state? Happens to be the United States in this case. How is it possible that you have a power company in BC that's going to make energy, but it's only going to ship it to the U.S.? And that's going to be at taxpayers' expense. It's kind of weird.
On top of that, the way we are out here now, over the last 3 years, we've had to buy power back from the U.S. So we're going to sell it cheap and buy it back expensive.
You betcha. So the incompetence of the Canadian business community at that, it's not incompetence, it's corruption. Someone gets a kickback. There's no question.
Yeah.
All right?
The old adage, follow the money.
Follow the money. And in this case, it's very clear that from the top down, the money is going to, U.S. interests. And when the thing starts to go really, really stinky, they're just going to say, you know what, we'll fix this for you. And here's the cost. And when it gets really stinky, and there's a lot of folks who are in the elbows up crowd at the moment who might actually be feeling a little bit, under the weather. Abused. Okay, I was going to say under the weather because they're not getting their 3 square meals. They might just say, "Oh, that sounds like a hell of a good idea." That's what it was. That was the thing all along. This guy's a good negotiator. He really did it. He gave us the best deal possible. We're going to have a U.S. dollar. We're going to have all those neat U.S. benefits. That's what this was all about from the beginning.
Yeah. Well, folks, you heard it here first.
Yeah, we could also be full of poop, but
well,
what they say. Well, listen, we don't have a crystal ball, but we do know this much. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and think you're going to get a different result, period. We also know, without a crystal ball, that if you think going down the communist socialist route is going to fix things, history proves over and over again it never worked. Socialism, this is a capitalist market-driven economy in North America. If you think you're going to disengage yourself from the people who pay you to survive, essentially. If there was no United States beside us, I'm not sure what the hell kind of country we'd have here. Think about it now. Yeah. Imagine if Canada was off in the middle of nowhere in the Pacific. Okay? And there are no neighbors. Even Australia is not a good example because they're fairly close to huge Asian economic powers. Right?
Yeah.
But if there was no United States next to us, what would Canada be? Think about it.
Yeah.
And if you look, if Canada was a map that showed the reality of where people live, okay, because you got this big pink part on the map, okay, but if you take the 35 million legitimately living in this country, not the 42 million that they make up all the time now, it would be a thin strip from Victoria over to Montreal, 100 miles deep. That's Canada. If that. All right? Yeah. But these morons don't grasp that. Okay? But that's the reality. Okay?
Yeah, it is. A sad state of affairs.
Well, no, isn't that a happy ending?
We're being led, what is it, we're being led down the garden path by a blind man. I don't know.
Well, no, I don't. Listen, I can't blame the people who've done this because they're corrupt, evil people with a mission, and that is to fill their boots, to stay in power. They are very clear-minded of what they're doing. We can call him the idiot king and his pals and the carnage. They know exactly what they're doing. Very,
very, very reminiscent in my mind what happened in the late 30s and early 40s.
Yep. The real tragedy is that we have what we thought was an educated population, which turned out to be retarded cognitively, because they've just, most people either don't care or don't know or don't want to know. And that is...
And it goes back to what I said before. Until it actually affects you personally, you really don't give a rat's behind.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the unhappy note we have to end today's broadcast on, because we'll just be beating a dead horse if we went on anymore. If you want to learn about the budget, you can go online and you can read about it. You don't need us to emphasize the negative, because it's all there. One of the things that I would recommend to the conservatives at this point, given there's no chance that you're going to defeat this bill, I just don't see it. You might as well stay at home on the 15th when the vote comes down and just let them pass it, and say you abstained, you had nothing to do with this mess. And when it finally comes to the last strokes, the day of reckoning, whatever you want to call it, you can then at least have the moral high ground to stand and say, I had nothing to do with this. I told you this is not a good idea, but I wasn't going to put the country through a catharsis of an election just for this. So you know what? You liberals and all you elbows up geniuses, this is on you. Yeah. Now, whether there's still a country at that point that you can, sew back together again, that I'm afraid the jury's out on that.
That's another topic for another day.
Well, another topic for another day, or maybe we should go to one of those betting places and see, how that comes across when you put down the odds. Yes. There's a lot of look. They're still going to go after, the orange man in the White House. This is all they got, okay? Because this is going to be another one of those cases that we're going to get our all head of steam over the fact that there's this guy whose guts we hate, and that all our problems are because of him. Yeah. But he's still around for another 3 years.
We're going to lose track of the fact that whether we like him, whether we hate him, we cannot vote for the President of the United States.
That's right. That's right.
We are living next door to a giant population.
Who, by the way, doesn't give a damn about this conversation we're having.
No. And the reality is that they are neighbors. We can say they're friends. We have some things in common, some things not. But the biggest reality here is we are neighbors. And I think right now, if you look at it in a neighborhood kind of context, we're going through a bit of a rocky patch. And I don't know when that's going to be resolved, if it will be resolved. Time will tell.
Well, I think we could use an analogy that our neighbor has this big mansion on the street, and they had one hell of a party. And we have a little bungalow on the same street, and we got all pissy about the fact they're having a party, and they didn't invite us. So, we're making all sorts of noise with the other neighbors in the broader community, other countries. These guys, we're going to show them. Yeah, they snubbed us. Oh, okay, well, that's fine. But they forget that the people having the big party in the mansion didn't care that the little bungalow down the street was getting all, pissy about it.
Yeah.
So
anyway, that's probably where we should end it. Otherwise, we're going to get frustrated.
We're not frustrated now? I didn't know that.
Worse.
Okay, well, listen.
Anyway.
What do you say when we get to the end? Do you say, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Buy us a coffee. And we'll see you next week.
We'll be a little more cheerful next episode.
No, we're not. Okay. All right. Welcome to Doom and Gloom. Brought to you by...
All right. Anyway, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bud. Stay out of trouble.